Good morning, students. Welcome to this e-class of BA Part 3rd, Paper 1st of BND Government Arts College, Chimanpura. I am Dr. Ekta Goswami, and in this class, we would be discussing the next poem prescribed in your syllabus, A Prayer for My Daughter. This is a beautiful and a very significant poem written by W.B. Yeats. W.B. Yeats was an illustrious Irish poet, writer and playwright. He is a prominent literary figure of his age. If we look at the title of the poem, this is a prayer from a father for his newborn daughter. The daughter is Anne Butler Yeats, who is born in the year 1919, and this is the year when this poem was composed. Yeats's poetry and Yeats's biography are closely interwoven. Means we cannot understand Yeats's poetry without having a knowledge of his life. A Prayer for My Daughter is a deeply personal poem expressing the poet's hopes and fear about the future of his daughter. The poem shows Yeats's deep fatherly feelings or his paternal concern for his daughter and his wish for stability, equilibrium and happy life for his daughter. Now, why the poet is apprehensive for his daughter and why particularly he is making this prayer for his daughter is because of the year in which his daughter Anne Butler Yeats was born and in the year in which this poem was composed. Now the year is 1990. 1919 is a very prominent year because the First World War had just drawn to a close, leaving a trail of death and destruction in Europe. Again, this is an Irish land. So inside Ireland, there was a surge of Irish nationalism and Catholicism. Life was hard in Ireland then because of want, unrest, upheaval, dissatisfaction. It made life difficult for the common people. And there was frustration, anger, and fear all around. And in this backdrop, Yeats has written this poem, or he's making a prayer for his newborn daughter. If we take up the poem demonstrates the poet's anxiety and concern for the future of his daughter Anne Butler Yeats. The poem was written in 1919, shortly after her birth, and the ongoing turmoil and tension is visible all through the poem. The poem appeared for the first time in Yeats's poetry collection, Michael Robartes and Dancer in 1921. The poem depicts the love and anxiety of a father for the future of his newborn daughter. The setting of the poem is unspecified, probably the home of Yeats, because he's looking out from the window of his room. The speaker is the poet himself talking to his infant daughter, and he's addressing his daughter and he's praying for his daughter. The tone is gloomy, frightening, apprehensive, as well as didactic. So the poem is a personal poem where a father is wishing for the well-being of his newborn daughter, and the poem extends its boundary and reaches to every father who is wishing for his newborn daughter or who is praying for his daughter when the environment outside is full of turmoil, tension and disturbance. So we'll begin up reading the poem. In stanza 1, the poet says, "Once more the storm is howling, and Half it under this cradle hood and coverlid, my child sleeps on. There is no obstacle but Gregory's wood and one bare hill, whereby the haystack and roof levelling wind, bred on the Atlantic, can be stayed. And for an hour I have walked and prayed because of the great gloom that is in my mind. So the poem, because this poem is addressed to his infant daughter, so it opens up with the image of his daughter sleeping in a cradle, half hidden and half covered, and the child is sleeping in a very peaceful, in a very calm condition. But look at the environment outside. Look at the setting outside. There's a furious storm that is born on the Atlantic Ocean, and it is sweeping the Irish countryside. There's hardly any obstacle in the way of the storm to diminish its force, and the only obstacle that can be seen is Lady Gregory's estate and one hill on which there's no growth of shrub or there's no tree, that is only the haystack that is over there, and there is no obstacle that can be seen on the way except this wood and one bare hill. The storm is so furious that it brings haystack and roof down to the ground. So the enormity and the force of the storm is creating the disturbance in the poet's mind while he is seeing the daughter sleeping innocently all through a howling storm. Now notice the word howling, notice the word storm. There's a great gloom on Yeatser's mind because the violent environment or the violent response of nature seems to be symbolically representing a larger violence because of the fact that First World War is over and there was always the fear of another war impending. And this gloom all through runs in the poet's mind, and in that environment he thinks about the future well-being of his daughter. In stanza 2, the poet continues and he says, I have walked and prayed for this young child an hour and heard the sea wind scream upon the tower, and under the arches of the bridge and scream in the elms above the flooded stream, imagining in excited reverie that the future years had come, dancing to a frenzied drum out of the murderous innocence of the sea. Now the poet, he is disturbed by looking at the environment outside, and this environment is the general environment all through the Europe, all through the Ireland, and because of that disturbed environment, while he is trying to pray. Now how do we pray? We sit down and in a very calm condition we pray, but the restlessness of the poet prevents him from praying in a peaceful environment, so he is walking and he is praying. So the poet says that means all through this hour I have been walking and I have been praying, and for whom I have been praying? For the future well-being or for the future prospects of my young child, the daughter who is born to me. And he is worried about the future because the sound which are actually coming, as it was there in the first stanza, the sound was the howling sound. In the second stanza, it is the screaming sound of the sea wind, which is coming from the tower and under the arches of the bridge, and this scream means all these disturbing sounds are appearing from the flooded stream, from the elms above, and imagining in excited reverie. Now the poet actually considers himself to be in a state of excited reverie. Means in other words, he is lost in thoughts, but his thoughts are a kind of excitement. They are like a mad person. They are the one, means these thoughts are the ones who are creating and agitating excitement into his mind and into his heart. The intensity of the storm is so strong, means this disturbance in the environment is so strong that it makes him think that the years of future have come, and means in what manner they have come, that the world, it is going to come to an end, and this is the doomsday that has come, and dancing to a frenzied drum, means look at the sound, the howl, the storm, the scream, and the frenzied drum, means this is a disturbing sound of the drum. Along with that, the sea, out of the murderous innocence of the sea. Now the sea is destructive, the sea is murderous, yet it is innocent. It is innocent because it has no personal ill will against anyone, yet it would become a destructive force and it would destroy everything that is there in this world. So look at the paradox, look at the contrast, the murderous innocence of the sea. The sea, which is life-giving, would be murderous, and it would be responsible for creating the destruction in the world. In stanza 3rd, the poet says, may she be granted beauty, and yet not beauty to make a stranger's eye distraught, or hers before a looking glass, for such being made beautiful overmuch, consider beauty a sufficient end, lose natural kindness, and maybe the heart-revealing intimacy that chooses right and never find a friend. So the poet is wishing for his daughter, and he prays that his daughter should be granted beauty. She should be beautiful, but she should not be extremely beautiful, yet not beauty to make a stranger's eye distraught. Means she should not be exceedingly beautiful, and means such beauty, it would be disturbing for her, and if she grows into an exceedingly beautiful woman, then every stranger, he would have his eye upon her, and it would distort her, and it would make her dependent on her beauty for everything, or hers before a looking glass, because the beauty, means her physical beauty would be the only end, and she would pass much of her time before a looking glass admiring herself, admiring her beauty, for such being made beautiful overmuch. Because the poet believes that if a woman is exceedingly beautiful, if a woman is very beautiful, those women, they don't work upon their own virtues. They consider beauty a sufficient end. Means for them, beauty is an end in itself, and they lose natural kindness and maybe the heart revealing intimacy. Because all the time she would be passing her time in front of the mirror, and she would get extravagant ideas of her physical charms, and she would begin to think her beauty to be a sufficient end in itself. So he is saying that means this beauty would make her proud, and because of that pride, she will lose the natural kindness, the natural intimacy, which makes a person capable of choosing a right person, and means adding to their friend list. So she would not likely to be she would not likely find a suitable friend, a perfect partner, because for her this exceeding beauty would be a sufficient end, and along with that pride, she would lose that natural intimacy, natural kindness, which chooses right and which makes a person capable to find a friend. In stanza 4, the poet gives example of beautiful women, exceedingly beautiful women, and he's giving an example, and he's telling you out that why over beautiful women or exceedingly beautiful women or very beautiful women, they were not very happy all through their lives. The women who considered their beauty to be a sufficient end. So Yeats substantiates his view on how excessive beauty, it has been harmful for the women. So he says Helen, being chosen, found life flat and dull, and later had much trouble from a fool, while that great queen that rose out of the spray, being fatherless, could have her way, yet chose a bendy-legged smith for man. It's certain that fine women eat a crazy salad with their meat, whereby the horn of plenty is undone. So there are three references to ancient Greek mythology over here. First is for Helen. Helen was extraordinarily beautiful woman. The Greek warrior and general Menelaus got married to her because of her great beauty, but she found life dull with Menelaus and subsequently ran away with a lover who was a Trojan prince, Paris. So her elopement with this Trojan prince led to a prolonged and bloody war, the war of Troy, between the Greeks and the Trojans. So the poet actually thinks that because Helen was exceedingly beautiful, therefore neither she was happy herself in her life nor made others happy in their life or satisfied in their life or peaceful in their lives, because for long years this war actually continued and all the persons around her, they were engaged in this war. So later had much trouble from fool, while that great queen that rose out of spray, being fatherless, could have her way. So great queen, it refers to Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty and love. So she is believed to have emerged from sea foam, and having had no father, she knew no discipline. So she was uncontrolled, and therefore she was merely led by her desires, by her whims, by her eccentricities. And because of her undisciplined independence of spirit, she chose a husband who was unsuited for her. Now, we all know that Aphrodite married the lame god Hephaestus. Thus, even Aphrodite's beauty proved a curse to her, because she was unhappy with her husband and she was not peaceful, or it actually didn't give her a very happy kind of a life. So the poet believes it's certain that fine women eat a crazy salad with their meat. Fine women here means exceedingly beautiful women. So he is saying that means in their in their food, there's something which is disrupted, and because of that, means because of their beauty, the horn of plenty is undone. Means horn of plenty is for plenty and prosperity. So the prosperity in their life is not done. In stanza 4, the poet wishes that my daughter should not be exceedingly beautiful, and he gives example of beautiful women from history, from Greek mythology, and he feels that lovely women eat some crazy salad with their food, and as a result of which they have some crazy tendency and they wreck or they destroy their own lives. And he refers that the horn of plenty, which is suggestive of courtesy, which is suggestive of aristocracy, which is suggestive of ceremony, of plenty and prosperity, that is undone. Means they are not able to get prosperity in their lives. So in stanza 5, he further wishes for his daughter, and he says, in courtesy I would have her chiefly learned. Hearts are not had as a gift, but hearts are earned by those that are not entirely beautiful, yet many that have played the fool, for beauty's very self has charm made wise. And many a poor man that is roved, loved, and thought himself beloved, from a glad kindness cannot take his eyes. Now, in the beginning, I had told you that Yeats's life or Yeats's biography and Yeats's poems, they cannot be separated. Before explaining stanza 5, let me tell you about Montgomery. W.B. Yeats, he was a staunch Irish nationalist who continued to espouse this cause of Irish nationalism all through his life. At the prime age of 24, when he was only 24 years old, he met Montgomery, who too was an ardent Irish nationalist. So Yeats was so much infatuated by her, he was so enamored of her dedication, energy, and she was a very beautiful woman. So of course, Montgomery's beauty attracted Yeats. He was deeply infatuated and proposed to her nearly 4 times. But she was indifferent and she didn't reciprocate. Later, Yeats married Georgia Hyde Lees, and with whom he had a stable kind of a life, and these 2 children, they were born to him. So in stanza 5, when he is actually addressing his daughter, he is wishing for his daughter. The poet would like his daughter to learn courteous manners, because he is saying, in courtesy I would have her chiefly learned. The quality that I would like to have for my daughter is not beauty but courtesy. Courtesy are courteous manners. So I would greatly like that she should learn courtesy in her life. Hearts are not had as a gift, but hearts are earned by those that are not entirely beautiful. So he is saying that women who are not extraordinarily beautiful will attract true lovers, and if they are not, even if they are not very beautiful, if their hearts are good, if they have kindness in their heart, if they are courteous, they would be able to win hearts. They would be able to win courtesy and affection. Their hearts will not come as gift to women who possess exceedingly who possess extreme beauty, but hearts are won by those who are not entirely beautiful, but they are courteous. So the poet becomes autobiographical here and makes an oblique reference to his own futile love for the beautiful Montgomery. So the poet says that means, yet many that have played the fool, because for many years Yeats was infatuated by Montgomery, and Montgomery of course remained in Yeats's mind for a very long time. The memory was always there, and Montgomery was made the muse of many of Yeats's great literary works later. So he is saying that means, like a fool, he was playing like a fool when he was in love with Montgomery, when he was infatuated by the beauty of Montgomery. For beauty's very self has charm made wise, and this charm, the courtesy of his wife. So he's saying that means, even a person like me, who had proved, or means many of the persons who have been made fool by the charm or attraction of beauty, they were also later attracted to the courteous women, to the kind women, to the good natured women. So he is saying me that means, my daughter, she should not possess extreme beauty, but he wants his daughter to learn to be compassionate and kind. So the quality that he desires for his daughter is not beauty, but courtesy and kindness. And he says that means, many times men considered themselves playing a fool, and they consider beauty as a sufficient end, but later they face disappointment. And how they are made wise means, how do they learn when they are attracted towards a woman the charm of a woman who is courteous, and their hearts are earned by the courteous women. So he is referring to his own marriage, and he also wants that my daughter should not be arrogant. He believes that Montgomery was arrogant simply because she was exceedingly beautiful. So many a poor man that is roved, loved, thought himself beloved, from a glad kindness cannot take his eyes. So means initially they might be attracted to a beautiful woman, but later on they were attracted, or they received a glad kindness from a kind woman, from a courteous woman. In stanza 6, he further wishes for his daughter, and the poet says, may she become a flourishing hidden tree, that all her thoughts may like a linnet be, and have no business but dispensing round their magnanimities of sound, nor but in merriment begin a chase, nor but in merriment a quarrel. Oh, may she live like some green laurel, rooted in one dear perpetual place. So the poet likes his daughter to grow like a flourishing tree, hidden from the public gaze. So means he wants that his daughter should flourish in the vicinity of the house, in the boundaries of the house. So he continues to talk about his hopes and expectations for his daughter, and he wants that she should be happy and contented like a tree, like a flourishing hidden tree, and her thoughts should be like a linnet. Now, linnet we all know is a small bird. So, he would like her thoughts to be cheerful like the songs of a bird. Have no business but dispensing round their magnanimities of sound. No but in merriment begin a chase, no but in merriment a quarrel. Now, Yeats believed that intellectual hatred is the worst kind of hatred. So he would like her not to get involved in any competitive struggle except for the sake of fun, and he would not like her to get involved in a quarrel except in a jest, as it happens in the house, in the home. He wishes her to live like a green laurel tree, rooted permanently in one dear spot, one perpetual place, and be happy in the surroundings of her house. So the poet reveals his wish on his daughter being rooted in the traditional setup, in the traditional house, and quite happy and satisfied by herself. In stanza 7, the poet says, my mind, because the minds that I have loved, the sort of beauty that I have approved, prosper but little, has dried up of late, yet knows that to be choked with hate may well be of all evil chances chief. If there's no hatred in a mind, assault and battery of the wind can never tear the linnet from the leaf. So the poet says that my mind, when it was diverted to the minds I loved, again the reference to Montgomery. So he talks about his self-contentment, and he's saying that means initially the minds that I loved and the sort of beauty that I had approved, they prosper but little. So he's saying that means it was means it was disappointing to me for the minds I love, for the beauty that I approved, and it has dried up of late, means I am no longer attracted to that. But what I wish now is that there's a great misfortune to nourish feelings of hatred towards other. And the poet considers hatred to be the cause of all evil and prays that there should be no hatred in the mind of my daughter, because he believes that of all evil chances, means of all evil qualities, the chief evil is the feeling of hatred. And if there's no hatred in the mind, if a woman or if my daughter, she is not having hatred in her mind, then no storm outside can tear the leaves from the sturdy trees, or no turmoil, no war, no struggle can tear the linnet from the leaf. Means there would be no disturbance from the assault, the storm, the battery, the disruptions, or the turmoil of the world if there is no hatred in the mind of my daughter. So he is saying that means if a person has no hatred in mind, no harm can come to him in means by any of the storms of life, by any of the disturbances of life. So what he wants in his daughter is that she should not have any kind of hatred in her mind and her heart. In stanza 8, the poet further says, an intellectual hatred is the worst. So let her think opinions are accursed. Have I not seen the loveliest women born out of the mouth of plenty's horn? Because of her opinionated mind, barter that horn and every good, by quiet natures understood, for an old bellows full of angry wind. So in stanza 8, the poet implores his daughter to shun the wild feelings, the passionate feelings, the hateful feelings, because he believes that the kind of intellectual hatred which Montgomery had for the English rulers of Ireland is the worst form of hatred. So the poet believes that I would not like my daughter to have any strong opinions of an intellectual kind, because intellectual hatred is worst, and these strong opinions of the intellectual kind, they would lead only to sufferings and happiness. By giving the example of Montgomery, who came from a rich aristocratic family. So he is saying that means I have seen loveliest women born out of the mouth of plenty's horn. Means she was born in a rich family, in an aristocratic family, who might have been enjoying her life in a very peaceful environment, in a very aristocratic environment. Barter that horn in every good, by quiet natures understood, for an old bellows full of angry wind. Because she had an intellectual hatred for the rulers of Ireland, and she was the staunch supporter of Irish nationalism and espoused that cause, and means she was an ardent nationalist. So for that, these intellectual opinions, they were bartering the quiet natures, the horn of plenty, the prosperity, and gave her this agitated propagandist, the angry wind, means the disturbance in her life all through. So what he believes is that his daughter should not have intellectual hatred, and she should not be much opinionated in her life, because opinions are accursed, intellectual hatred is the worst, and if she is having intellectual hatred and opinions, she would barter the peaceful environment and would invite the angry wind, would invite the disturbance and disruptions in her life all through, like Montgomery. In stanza 9, the poet says, considering that all hatred driven hence, the soul recovers radical innocence and learns at last that it is self-delighting, self-appeasing, self-affrighting, and that its own sweet will is heaven's will. She can, though every face should squall and every windy quarter howl, or every bellows burst, be happy still. So he is saying that means if my daughter is away from hatred, means if hatred is not there in her mind, then it would be quite convenient for her to recover the radical innocence which would make her happy. So if a person, the poet believes that if a person drives out all hatred from his mind, the soul in its radical innocence, in its original basic innocence, would be happy and the soul would itself learn to cede all the joy that one needs in life. Means it would be very satisfying for a person, it would be very easy for a person if a person is not having any kind of hatred, to learn that how to be happy in life, self delighting, self appeasing, self affrighting. So the soul would be free to explore delight, appeasement and affright. So, according to the poet, the ideal woman makes everyone happy and comfortable. So, own sweet will is heaven's will. She can, though every face should scowl. Maybe persons are having hatred in their mind. They are scowling, they are complaining, but a woman who is not having hatred in her life, if she is not having this intellectual hatred in her life, she would find happiness and may windy quarter howl. Means maybe there is disturbance around, maybe there are misfortunes around, but with her clear mind, she would be able to find happiness. So the poet's daughter, by ridding herself from all hatred, can lead a happy life no matter what the attitude of her people might be towards her, and whatsoever hostile opinions they can be towards her, but she would find happiness in her life if she is devoid of this hatred from her mind and from her heart. In stanza 10, the poet says, "And may her bridegroom bring her to a house where all is accustomed, ceremonious, for arrogance and hatred are the wares peddled in the thoroughfares. How but in custom and in ceremony are innocence and beauty born? Ceremony is a name for the rich horn, and custom for the spreading laurel tree." So, in the final stanza, the poet wants his daughter to be married to a man who belongs to a family that believes in custom, in ceremony, in tradition, and yet he was an upholder of the formal courtesy, etiquette, ceremonious behavior, customary graces, and means he was quite attracted to aristocratic households and tradition and ceremony. So he believes that his daughter be married to a man who belongs to a ceremonious house and house with aristocratic values and tradition, and he concludes that his daughter would be rooted in spiritual values like a laurel tree. Means she should have a flourishing life with her bridegroom. If we take up the structure of the poem is written in lyric form, containing 10 stanzas with 8 lines in each stanza. The meter of the poem alternates between iambic pentameter, trochaic pentameter, and each stanza follows a regular rhyme scheme of AABB, CDD, C. William Butler Yeats was born as the eldest son of John Butler Yeats on June 13, 1865. Yeats is the greatest poetical figure of his age. He owed much to Ireland as Ireland owed much to him. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1923. His poetic career beginning in 1880 and concluding around 1930. So his greatest poetry were produced between the age of 50 and 75. 50 to 75. So this poem demonstrates the love and anxiety of a father for the future of his newborn daughter, and while writing the poem, the poet's hopes and fear about the future of the daughter is reflected. So the poem can be a general expression of the anxiety shared by all fathers when the environment in the world is disturbing and is disrupting. So the poem is a prayer for order and grace in a battered civilization. His bitter reference to Montgomery suggests his outlook that how beauty and grace can be distorted by politics, intellectual hatred, and arrogance, which he wants that his daughter should avoid in her life.